Hey everybody, welcome back to our neck of the woods. So in this video, I have taken all of your guys' suggestions. I've thought of a few more things that I want to go ahead and use, and we went and purchased almost everything. So we're going to go ahead and get started and start the radiant floor heat. Okay, so this is not everything, but I did as best as I could. Everything either came from the store or supplyhouse.com, and I did take your guys' suggestions to start out. I did go ahead and pick up a manifold with valves, but I only did this on the hot runs. So we don't have valves coming back on the cold because I really don't see the point. And Supply House did send me the wrong brass tubes or copper tubes. They sent me 5 instead of 3 for out in the garage, so I had to go purchase this one, and I will go ahead and return the 5s because basically I don't want to just cap off a nipple here and then worry about leaks down the road, because you're going to have a clamp down here, a little bit of hose, and then another clamp, so didn't want to deal with that. But unfortunately, the store only had a 4 valve instead of a 3, so we at least have to deal with one of these closed off. But again, I'm going to return the other ones to Supply House and go ahead and just use this one. And then everything else is pretty much your guys' suggestions, where the on-off valve should be, an air-water separator. Again, I got a pump controller, not a zone controller, which is this guy. The pumps I feel pretty good about. That is a Grundfos 1/25 horsepower. Like I said, I know a guy named Steve. He's on YouTube watching me now. He's been helping me out with all of this. And he said that he has a 1/25 horsepower. And that's enough for 3 zones out in the garage, 300 feet or less, and it does fine. And there's 3 settings on that for like a fast, medium, and slow speed. And I think he has his set to slow. So it's probably more than enough for the garage. The other thing that makes it good for the garage is the fact that we're not changing elevation at all. We're going to be having everything up on the wall over here, and then the garage is right there going out, so everything's on a complete flat playing field. And in fact, the basement is actually going to be going down in elevation. So totally fine with the pump that I picked for that. And I'm not going with the Grundfos 1/6 that was also in cast iron like that one. I actually found a Grundfos 1/12 horsepower, and so it's not as powerful, so it should be fine. That 1/12 is basically the half of 1/25, so it should be able to do 6 if the 1/25 can do 3. And what's good about this pump is it was actually $20 cheaper than the 1/6 horsepower in cast, but this is a 1/12 in stainless steel. So this pump not only should be able to do all of that, but it should last a lot longer and not create any rust or anything like that, because again, all the internal components are stainless steel. Now, I did have to purchase a few things that I didn't want to, like for example, this $80 crimper right here that you can crimp 3/8, 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 1 inch on these PEX fittings. So basically the same thing that the well guys used, except the well guys, theirs was an automatic like Milwaukee, or I think it was actually rigid, that just automatically crimps around instead of you having to do it manual. But unfortunately, again, we do have to crimp a 3/4 there, and then we're going to go from crimp to expansion. So there's 2 brass fittings that we need to put together to go from one to the other, and then we'll crimp those down, and then that's really all I should need that tool for. And then I think I'm going crazy trying to think about all this stuff at once when I'm going out and buying stuff, because not only do we have to deal with the radiant, but we still have to do more stuff with the boilers. We've got to get a condensation drain on both of these and get those down to the floor somehow. And then if they do actually condensate all the time, I have no idea what I'm going to do with the water, because we don't have a floor drain in here. We need electricity to come off of here to plug this in, also for the controller and the 2 pumps. And then of course we bought a crap load of PVC piping because we have to get 4 vents now on each one of these, so 4 total, but you've got an intake and exhaust, an intake and exhaust. We've got to run those and strap those across the ceiling. We've got to punch up through the subfloor on the first floor. And unfortunately, that little electrical chase is not going to be enough. So we have to build out a bigger chase to have 4 2-inch PVC pipes going all the way up and out of the house. And last, I guess, we got a whole bunch of water here. Now, it is smart to go ahead and use distilled water, so there's nothing in there that's, and there's no minerals that are gonna hurt the boilers over time, but just running straight distilled water, I believe that has more of a chance to pick up contaminants because it's not really a happy solution because there is nothing in it. Water wants to kind of pull other stuff into itself, so we're going to go ahead and mix a glycol mixture in with that, and that's recommended also and anyway, just in case it freezes. Obviously the garage could potentially see freezing cold temperatures. Down here in the basement, probably not likely. We only were able to pick up 1 gallon of this stuff at the store, and this blew me away. I had no idea how much water this thing would actually hold. Online says that each 1/2-inch tube, 1 foot long, can hold 0.0092 gallons per foot. Well, when I first read that, I was like, oh, that's nothing, 0.0092. But when you add up 2,700 feet of water, we get almost 25 gallons of fluid that we need. And that's not including the manifolds, the boiler, the expansion tank, and all the fittings and everything else. So I'm guessing that we're probably gonna need 30 gallons of fluid in here, which is gonna be quite expensive. The distilled water at 15 gallons is not really gonna cost much of anything. But that stuff right there was $26 a gallon, and I need 14 more of them. Now, Supply House does sell the Cryotech 100 in 5 gallons, so if I just get 3 of those, that'll be 15 right there, and then I can have an extra one on hand when one day we are gonna have to flush the system, and we will have to replace everything. So it's not bad to have some on standby. And the reason why you do wanna use this stuff is it is a glycol solution, but it's different than car antifreeze. I believe car antifreeze is ethylene glycol, so that is very toxic. You don't want to just throw that away one day. While this stuff is technically not hazardous, you could actually drink a little bit and not hurt yourself, but obviously not recommended. But this stuff you could actually dump or pump out somewhere, and technically it shouldn't hurt anything. We'll still probably collect it one day and then take it to get recycled. But this is actually, I think, polypropylene glycol. So non-hazardous, a little bit safer. It is what is recommended. And it is recommended roughly for a 50-50 mixture. So again, we need 14 more gallons of that to go with 15 gallons of distilled water. We'll see if it loads up 30 gallons in the entire system. And then hopefully soon we'll be able to test that out and actually see. So I have got a lot to do. I have got intake, exhaust, condensation, the actual radiant itself. We've got electrical to do. So I'm basically just gonna get started with some of the littlest stuff that I think that I can knock out, and then we'll just go from there. Alright, well, this is taking forever, but I did get 2 of these all done up and ready to go. And then I got a bunch of these, is what I was talking about, as we're going from press to expansion. And they do make these in one piece, but I couldn't find the sizes that I wanted. So this is a 3/4 inch expansion over to 3/4 inch press. And again, good reason why to use expansion. I mean, just look at the difference of how small that expansion is versus how big the press is, or the other way around. Like if you put those two side by side, the expansion is so much bigger on the inside because it's 3/4 of an inch on the inside as opposed to 3/4 of an inch on the outside. So the thickness of the brass is where you lose water pressure and flow. So I do not like press fit, although it is really easy. The tool is very easy. You're just pushing it together until it basically locks in on itself, and then it's done. Pull it apart, which is very easy. It releases, and you're done. So the manifold out in the garage will be going from 3/4 inch press to press over to expansion, and then of course we can just go throw this in the garage right now. Cut the tubes to wherever we're going to mount this on the wall, and press with 1/2 inch, and then boom, we got one done. And then again, for this guy, we'll go ahead, and the only thing that sucks about this guy, if I didn't mention it, all the manifolds seem to be in the orientation of, if the wall is back here and the valves are out front, all of the inlets seem to be on this side. Well, out in the garage, that's backwards. We need the inlet over here. So because we're coming through the wall right here. So the return, I guess I'll just go like this. But unfortunately for this one, we're gonna have to bring the PEX over this way, and then we're gonna have to 90, and then we're gonna have to 90 into here. So may not look the prettiest, but again, I don't want to turn this back and have the valves facing the wall, because that would be stupid. But I don't know. It is what it is. It's just what I have to work with. Now, the only other thing with this press fit, it's not 100% recommended, but I've seen companies who sell a lot of parts and stuff put this stuff online, and it's not recommended to use PEX A for press, but it can be done. Will Uponor or somebody say, hey, your garage flooded and we're not paying for that because you used Uponor's PEX A for an expansion. You should have used PEX B or PEX C on these press fittings. But it can be done. It is extremely tight. At least when you put an expansion fitting on, you can grab the tube and actually twist it back and forth. It actually slides on here. I cannot move this thing at all. So even though we're using the wrong PEX kinda, once these guys are on, these things are solid. If they do leak one day, obviously we're not gonna file a claim or anything like that and say that it's somebody's fault. We're the one that used PEX A on a kind of PEX B setup with press, but easy enough. Just cut the copper ring, and then we literally just have to go buy, hopefully not a 25-foot roll or anything, but hopefully we can just buy like a 5-foot stick of like PEX B, and unfortunately it will come in ugly like blue or red when everything else is white, but whatever. But we'll just have to knock that out and put that in there and use what it's supposed to be used as. Okay, now I'm at the point where I need to start learning about where I'm putting stuff, and I don't even know if I'm going to get around to it tonight due to the fact that I don't have the second pump here. That one got ordered, the stainless steel one that I was talking about. We need to make sure that wherever the expansion tank goes, that's not in the way of anything. And obviously those gas lines right there going up are pretty much taking up the room up in there, so I think we might have to put the expansion tank, maybe if it will fit in between the tank and that gas line right there, if I measure that one and take that kind of size into consideration. Yeah, I don't know exactly where everything's going to go or how it's going to go. Obviously, we know we need gauges on kind of the ins and the outs, so those probably could be the next thing that could go on. We can put an expansion fitting onto there, over to the gauge, and then there, over to the gauge, and then we'll have to do the same thing for the garage, wherever they're going to end up. And then again, we need to figure out where the pumps and everything are going to go. And I've already known something else I forgot. If I hooked all of this up right now, I'm missing a T-fitting, or actually 2 T-fittings, so that we can tie wherever these now come down and whatever these go into next, whether it be a pump or the on-off valves or whatever. I need to look at all this stuff and figure out where I'm going to put it. But these expansion fittings here, where they come down, I need to know where they're going and if everything's going to fit. So, I can already tell you, I don't know exactly how this is going to work out, because the gas line, I don't know how, well, I missed it on that side, as you can see. Gas line coming in here, but the cold and the gas are pretty much equal with each other. So that really sucks that if you look in right about there, that water line is maybe a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch further out from the wall than the gas pipe. But that's gonna create some rubbing. So that sucks, unless I 90 out over here and then down. So I'd have to get a 90 3/4 fitting, which those are sold out everywhere. I don't know if I'm going to get my hands on one of them. Maybe in brass I will, but at least black PEX A is sold out everywhere. So I may have to 90 on out to equal the hot, so they both come down together. But then again, I may have to 90 back into the wall wherever the pump's going to sit and how the pump's going to sit. So we don't have the pump for that. And I'd like to hook up the house first before I hook up the garage. But this is going to take a little bit of planning and thinking where everything's going to go. So I'll think about this and then I'll be back in a second. All right, moving along, I did go ahead and mount the pressure and temperature gauges, and I did knock that board out there. Those PEX tubes were just way too, like, coming out of the conduit. They were having to push out, then the board was pushing them out more, and then they were getting sucked back in. So just removed that strip up there, so now they're basically sitting more flush with the particle board, and they're not so stressed now. But looking at directions, which helps, it looks like our air eliminator, or our water air separator, we have a VJR model, and it says on the VJR box, do not turn the port. What I mean by that is some air separators, that little nipple right up in there, some you can turn, and you're not supposed to leave them 100% tight, because if you leave them 100% tight, the air can't escape out. That one is 100% tight, but the way that this thing must be designed, the air can still leak out without having to turn that. So if you have one of the older ones or the little ones that are only about that big, maybe about that big around, that is one that you're gonna want to leave it slightly loose. But apparently this model, which is the VJR Spyro Vent Junior, they don't want you to touch it, so it's just basically ready to go. Now, again, directions help. So expansion tank can be mounted right below this guy. It looks like they've got it on the hot side. And then since we don't have a water supply or shut off or coming in from like the well, and this is a closed system, that's pretty much eliminated. So it looks like we're just coming out of the hot boiler, going into this guy. Expansion tank will go down below. Then it will go and run all the way back through the system, and then it will come on back. And if I'm not mistaken, we're gonna install the pumps on the cold side. So we're gonna mount the pump right there on the cold side as it's coming back as a return. The pump will go kind of, right here up in the wall. It will then turn and then go up into the cold side. So the pump is kind of acting like the well pump down in the ground. It's pumping it up into the cold side of this boiler, and then it goes out to the hot. I'm assuming they don't want that the pumps on the hot side, just because hot can get so hot. Maybe they prematurely wear the pumps out. But from what Steve told me, his radiant heat is leaving at 120 degrees and it's returning at 112. So not much of a temperature drop at all as those tubes are going through the floor. 8 degrees isn't bad, but it's still 112 degrees. That's still pretty freaking warm. That's warmer than what you would take a shower or what you would take even a jacuzzi. So definitely need to be mindful of that and put it on the cold side. So we'll do that. We definitely need some tees, some 3/4 inch tees, since again we have to tie in the garage into this system over here, and we're going to need a couple backflow preventers. So I'm probably going to need 2 of these in 3/4 inch, so that way when the cold pump is pushing the water from the garage back to the cold side, it doesn't go into the T and then try to go down that way and go into this, go into the house's return for the cold side. So we need a backflow preventer there, and we'll need a backflow preventer going out to the garage. So again, the house isn't trying to pump its water out to the garage in the reverse direction. So we need 2 of those. We need T fittings. And like I said, I'm just forgetting a whole bunch of stuff, as you know, I was there forever picking up 1,000 pieces. So I'm going to continue to work my brain around this. I'm going to work on the electrical maybe right now and see where we're going to put the relay. And I think maybe, just maybe, I'm going to mount the pressure tank and the expansion tank and the air water separator probably in this gap over in here. And that's only because up in here and up in here, I don't know how that's gonna fit. So if we leave the hot side right there, we go on over, we go up into the air eliminator, and then we come on down, then we're gonna have to like 90, 90, 90 into the hots going out. And then basically we are using all the square footage of our wall. I probably guessed pretty good here on doing an 8x10 room because we're using like every bit of it. So let me think this out a little bit more. Let me think about the electrical here. And again, I don't want to get in anybody's way, but we just need to make sure we at least get this plug maybe somewhere right about here so we're not interrupting anything water related. Okay, starting the work on the condensate drains, because again, that's just something that I can knock out and get out of the way. I learned the setup by Mike, the Rinnai guy on YouTube. He has a whole series on the Rinnai units, and he just does everything. Multiple videos on the gas lines, the water lines, whether you're using recirc or not, just dozens and dozens and dozens of videos talking about how to do everything. So this little trick he likes to do, that's basically just getting air into this line. So you've got basically a vent, so air can come down into here, and basically it just goes on down. He just likes adding this little guy in. Now, what I'm not sure of, and maybe I'll get in trouble for this, why does everybody use CPVC on drain lines and stuff like this and not PVC? The PVC was cheaper, and I know the condensate that comes out of here is pretty toxic or acidic, so I wonder if it's going to break down PVC. But I don't know. Let me know. Do I have to swap this out one day and go with CPVC over PVC? I just don't like CPVC because it was a little bit more money, and I hate the yellow color of the pipe. I think the white looks a lot cleaner. So let me know if I'm doing that wrong, but this guy's just going to come down here, 90 over to the wall. Unfortunately, have to 90 again and hug the wall so it can get behind everything. And then at some point, we need to figure out how we're going to bring this one and tie it into this one, so we have one drain line for both of those as they empty in a bucket or some sort of maybe we can get like a recirculating pump or something, or a condensate pump. I think you can get them for like AC units that when it condensates your furnace, you can put it into like a little pump and send it up like a little 3/8 or something inch like vinyl tubing or something, and you can run it up and get it all the way out and like put it over to your sump pump. So I just don't know how much these things are going to condensate. So for now, we'll put like a 5-gallon bucket under here, see how much water it actually collects. And again, why not just tie these into one unit and get the water out of here somehow together instead of separate. Okay, it is really early in the morning on Sunday now. I'm getting tired and losing brain cells, so I'm leaving it for tonight. I'm running out of stuff anyway. Still need to figure out how I'm going to configure it, but I went ahead and built the garage pump out, so it's ready to go. I did save a little bit of money. They have these on-off valves to where you can replace the pump. This on-off valve has nothing on it, while this one has a garden hose hookup. So when we're filling up the system, we can take that off right there, fill it up with a garden hose, and then because we've got 2 pumps, and I bought one with no garden hose and one with garden hose for both pumps, then this basically will be like the in and the other one will be like the out, if that will work, but maybe not. I'll have to, I don't know. I got to think about that a little bit. But this pump is all built out for the garage. But if we pretend that this pump is the house pump only, then I think what I'm going to do is mount this guy somewhere right about here. That's where that one's going to go. So 90 up, 90 over, and then we'll 90 right up into this pipe here. Again, this is kind of a pain in the butt that this hose is touching here. So we have to like get back to the wall. As you can see, we're bending on the brass, so maybe if we just leave this very loose right here and put a 90 right there, then we can 90 back to the wall and then come down and then go back over to the pump. But that remains to be seen, so we'll figure that out later. The hot, I think we're gonna come over here, and I didn't do this condensate because these could potentially hit each other. So if the hot comes out over here and goes to this wall, I think we can go up, go into the air separator, come back out, come on down here, and then we'll 90 over this way. We will put our Y capture mesh screen thing in here. This thing basically can catch like debris and stuff, but I'm not sure if that actually can go on the hot pipe, so I need to still look into that. But if we mount that guy right here, then we just need to come over 90, 90, and then that would complete the hot. The only thing else I would need is the overpressure valve. Got to put that somewhere up in there along with this guy right here. So maybe if I get a T fitting, this can go this way into the T, go up into that, and then down would be coming back down this way. So still need to think about that a little bit and look at a few more components online. We need, again, the one-way valves, so we're not going into anything. I need some more brackets. I need the mounting plates that I forgot. And then the Taco, which I think you say a Taco, not taco. The Taco controller's up there. So we'll have to get a pipe bender. I think we're going to come out of the outlet right here, and then we'll come on over, and then I think we'll do an S-bend. So we'll come up, we'll come over, and we'll put an outlet right here. So this guy can go into here. This is close access to this. We're going to need some 24 gauge wire for the thermostats. The temperature sensors or the thermostats did not come with them, so we've got to get a one of those down here in the basement, one out in the garage with 24-volt wire. So that goes up over to there. And then again, I still got to figure out how do we power this. Do we power it off of an outlet or something else? And then the last thing, we've got to get that flexible metal hose or flexible metal conduit. So we can come out of these and we'll go down to a pump. And then I think I'm going to put the garage pump, put them side by side right there. The only problem with that is you're going to have to jump over one of the lines here so that they can get back into each other unless I figure something out with that. So it'll look nice when I'm done, but we're going to just make sure we get the electric and wait on the expansion tank and everything, so we know how far out everything's going to sit off the wall, so we know what T's and 90s and stuff we need for the radiant. But so far so good. I think it's looking good, and once again, this room is basically going to be 100% filled when we're done. So I'm going to get some sleep, think about this, and then I will be back tomorrow or later in the week to finish this out. Hey everybody, welcome back. Another day, a few days later since I was down here. And basically, we just waited on more stuff to show up. So we've made a few more runs to the store, supply house, Amazon, just grabbing all the little bits and pieces to get this system to work. And if anyone's curious where we're at now price-wise, I can't tell you the difference between the Radiant because I just don't know. But I can tell you we're somewhere right now around $6,000. But that's for everything. That's all of the water lines in the house. That's all of the Radiant stuff. That's buying pumps for the Radiant. That's buying the fluid, which luckily I was able to find in the 5 gallons. Supply house and everybody else was out. I just happened to find those buried on a shelf behind a bunch of packs out of store. So we don't have to buy the individual gallons. And again, that's just everything, including, like I said, a pump so we can charge this system up, garden hoses. The smallest wire I could find was 22 gauge. Which is recommended to be the absolute smallest wire to go with the thermostats. So 24 volt system, 22 gauge wire, buying all that. Sometimes you got to buy brass fittings instead of the plastic PEX, which we were able to find on Amazon. So now we've got pretty much everything that we can get done here tonight, except I honestly, I think the only thing stopping me from finishing this out tonight is the second pump that hasn't arrived yet. So we'll have to see when that will get here, and we'll be able to basically get that on. And we'll at least know from the size of this pump here that the house will go here, the garage will go next to it. But tonight I think we can get the garage pump set up, finish the PEX lines. We've got the expansion tank and the expansion tank bracket, so we can get all that done up tonight. So we're pretty much ready to go. And interesting fact, like I said, it's been getting down into the low 20s, low 30s, high 20s at nighttime outside. And it's crazy that the garage is still above 53 degrees right now. And I did grab some more of these on Amazon. So we've got one that can sit out here instead of the one that's down in the vault room. So you can see we're 50 in the basement, but we're 53 out in the garage. So clearly the insulation is working. We don't have the drafts from the open window and a ceiling that's not insulated right now. But that's a pretty big difference for 3 degrees. It really does feel night and day out in the garage versus that 50 degrees in the basement right now feels pretty cold. But we've got some fires going in the electric one in here. So we're gonna set up the camera, we're gonna get started, and we'll just kind of go over a little bit more that I've bought, my ideas, and we'll just take it one step at a time. Okay, now one issue that I thought of when designing this and figuring all this out is what happens when 2 zones turn on at the same time? Because we have 2 zones, 2 different pumps, all going back to the same source, we have 2 different horse-powered pumps. What happens if the more powerful pump goes up to a T, water goes this way to go back here, but then the water also wants to go in the opposite direction because it's hitting a fork in the road and it has the ability to go in both directions. Well, if you have a weaker pump over here in the garage and the water is trying to go back this way, what happens that if the higher horsepower pump is pushing the water back towards the weak side? Now, I had mentioned we're gonna buy those brass check valves, which technically you don't need because both of my pumps actually have internal check valves on them. But when I called Takeo to talk about a few things, he mentioned on his pump that we have check valves on our pumps also. Granted, some pumps you can buy without them, so you have to make sure when you're buying them if you do or don't have them. But he's like, if our check valve ever fails one day, those mechanical type check valves made of all brass and stainless steel that are never gonna fail ever, it's cheap insurance to just throw one after the pump also. But again, the higher horsepower pump turns on, tries to send water backwards, whether it's hitting the brass check valve or the check valve down into the pump. I've got a feeling the higher horsepower pump is going to close off that check valve. Well, now you've got a pump turning on and its water can't go anywhere. Well, what happens with the pressure? That pump for the garage, for example, is rated at 145 PSI before it breaks. And the PEX pipe also has different PSI ratings versus how much heat is in the pipe. For example, at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, these PEX A pipes will burst at only 80 PSI. Well, we're only going to 120 PSI, or I'm sorry, 120 degrees. So there's a chance that these pipes will probably have a breaking somewhere around maybe 145 PSI. So either way, the pipe could potentially burst or the pump could potentially burst and start leaking. So that's got me really worried. Luckily, at least right now for our setup, the reason why I called Taco is Taco's Zone 3 actually has a priority switch that you can turn on and off. So if we hook the garage up or the basement to Zone 3, then if both spots call for heat at the exact same time, with the priority switch on, that won't happen. Only one of the pumps will turn on, and yes, one of the pumps will be pushing water backwards. It'll hit the check valve, but that's fine. You're not going to burst that because the water will just go back the opposite way and go up and through the pump and do a circulation. So the pressure will actually stay pretty low. But Taco said after 1 hour, the Zone 3 will allow the other zones to turn on. So now again, you will have both pumps on at the same time. Again, not a problem. I don't think that any of the zones are going to run for more than an hour, maybe on initial startup. So we'll get the basement hot first because it will probably run for over an hour, and we'll leave the garage shut off. Once the basement reaches temperature, then we'll go ahead and hook up the garage. They can run together, but again, if the basement's priority, when it actually turns on to go, to get back up to temperature, it may only be on for like 10 or 15 minutes, if that. So not a problem right now. The problem is if we ever need radiating heat for the first floor. We're back to the same situation. We've got 2 pumps. Possibly at that time, we'll go a 1/12 in the basement and a 1/12 upstairs. But again, you now have 2 pumps where water could be flowing in the same direction. What happens if you get like a deadhead in the pipe and they can't work you know what I mean? Like they're equal in strength, and again, the pressure builds up. So I'm not exactly sure how you get around that. So if someone can chime in and tell me 2 pumps going back to one way, how do you overcome a potential pressure issue with what I'm talking about? Good. Correct. Good. 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 All right, just turned the power on to these outlets. Now, Steve and I were talking about this, and I'm not sure what the electricians are gonna say, if I have to change anything. But these pumps, for example, the 1/25th pump is only pulling 0.75 amps. And I've got all this hooked up to a 20 amp circuit. So we should be okay. Worst case scenario, I actually want to call Taco and get their suggestion on the breaker. It says max overload is 15 amps, but I don't know if that means that the panel can be wired up to a 20 amp breaker, or if that means it has to be wired up to a 15 amp breaker. Either way, we can just go ahead and swap out this 20 here for a 15, and then unfortunately we're running out of breaker space. So this breaker 20 amp is feeding a ground fault outlet going over to this outlet, and then we're jumping up into this outlet, jumping over to this outlet, and then from this outlet we're jumping up, and obviously we are powering the panel and we have power. So we'll have to see when this is all turning on, if arc faulting is giving us issues, if ground fault is giving us issues. So if any of that happens, or if anybody wants that on its own dedicated circuit, we'll have to figure something else out. or we'll have to actually wire these two outlets maybe over into this outlet over here. So that way this one's feeding the panel only, and then these two outlets are feeding those two outlets. So the utility room will be on one breaker, and this dedicated outlet right here will be on one breaker. But for right now, it works. We have power. I don't foresee it being a problem, but we'll just have to see if code or anything changes their mind on that. But everything, again, is so low amperage, I don't think it really matters. Again, the pumps are under an amp. The hot water tank is only 3 amps. So on this dedicated circuit right here, we're only running 4.5 amps. And then on this one over here, I believe each one of these is only 0.75 amps also. 0.5 actually. So we only have 1 amp running off of these two. And then again, the hot water tank is 3 amps. So we're not overloading anything, even if we had to wire everything in together. We are well under 15 or even 20. And then of course the Grundfos, that's on its own 20 amp breaker, and it's going down, a 20 amp dual breaker going from the yellow, and then that's powering the 240 volts down into the pump. So well within limit. So we'll shut this back down, we'll start working on the piping, and just keep going at it. All right, a little bit of a break time. Definitely get what you pay for. That bracket mounting system I just did, what a joke. Just a steel U-bracket with sharp edges that are now pushing into the back of the expansion tank, and then steel worm clamps that are scratching the crap out of the paint, as opposed to Supply House had one that's like a metal ring that goes all the way around that you'll then pinch together, but there's a rubber gasket all the way around it, and then you bolt it to the wall. So quite a big difference in what you pay for, like $45 versus like $13. But Supply House wasn't gonna have that bracket for like, I don't know, like middle of December, so a month from now. So we had to go the cheap route. But again, trying to use up all of the wall space. That will go over there. Now we just need to figure out how we get the hot line from up there on the air separator down to the hot right there. And then up in there we need to put in a T. So we have our overpressure valve that will be up there. And all of that is at the highest point. So I think that's how that works. And then we just need to come back down out of that and probably get it 90 over towards the wall. Come down 90, 90, 90, and then that will be the hot done. It will be all done. And then we do have to figure out how we're gonna get the hot to come back from the garage. Again, break time, gonna figure out a little bit of this more. And I did move the pump over about 3 inches, so that way that 90 and that T are right in line with each other. So now I'm just waiting on my pump, can connect those up, and then that will be the cold complete, to where we can go from here back over to here, which I can do tonight. And then again, we're just waiting for the pump. And then that's one more thing that is all done, at least with the cold side. All right, everybody, getting close to the end of the night. I've just run out of 3/4 inch PEX expansion rings. I am definitely pretty much out of 3/4 inch pipe, and I've got everything else wired up. So pretty much we've got electricity now going from the pump up to the controller. And just to go over these in case you guys have never seen them before. So first off, coming from the pump, very easy. It just has some toggle switches in here that you just push back and push the wire in. So obviously ground, neutral, and load. So very easy. Clamp your pipe down or your flexible conduit. I believe this stuff is called MC cable. Now, definitely overkill at only 0.75 amps, I believe. Yeah, 0.75 amps is the max on max horsepower, 0.66 on medium, and 0.55 on 1. And I use 12-2 wire for this crap. So a little difficult to bend that stuff and get it up here into tight spaces. So with not even 1 amp, you definitely can get away with a much smaller copper wire. But again, very easy to wire up the pump. And then on the controller, very easy. You've got an input 120 volt VAC. So obviously just N for neutral, black for hot. Weird they don't call it load like everyone else does. And then we went ahead and wired up the garage to zone number 2, neutral hot. We've got the whole panel grounded right there. We're gonna leave this one exposed, so when the second pump comes up through here, we'll tie these two grounds together, and then we'll use that second grounding screw over in here right there. And then I believe on the instructions, which I wanna call Takeo back anyway, like I said, I want to go ahead and make sure that I do need a jumper wire. On some of the instructions it's there, then some of the other instructions it's not, depending how you configure it. But this 120 volt VAC for the ZC and ZR, I believe on my setup, I'm going to need a jumper wire to just go across there to connect the two. So very simple, but I just want to make sure that that's actually what I need. And then of course the thermostats are very simple. We got that roll of 22 gauge wire that's sitting around here somewhere. Right here, just went and got it off of Amazon. It's 100 feet, 22 gauge oxygen-free copper wire. And again, very tiny thin copper wire. So we will have to run a thermostat from right here into the R and W. Now, I don't know why everyone is always so different with their letters and stuff, but if you look at the back of this thermostat, you've only got 2 connection points, literally just 2 micro little screws right there. And the one on the left is labeled as X, and the one on the right is labeled as C. Now, usually C means common, but for some reason in the Takeo's controller, they are labeling stuff R and W. And apparently if the thermostats are drawing too much power, the Takeo came with a whole packet of resistors. They want you to solder in a resistor from the W over to basically the C. So I don't know why, I gotta make sure on that, but W is apparently common. Common is on there as C, and then X will just go right over to R. And that's it. Literally just 2 wires to each thing, except for your grounds, and you're done. So very simple controller to hook up. And again, this controller here, that is for pump control only. So this is just telling this pump to turn on, this pump, and this pump. The other controller is if I had, say, 1 pump. Let's say I got a 1/6 horsepower pump, and that was able to do all 15 zones if I had the first floor. Well, on the, I don't know, let's say it's on the hot. as the hot water is being pushed down through here, right here we would connect a one-way electric valve that would open and close. So one pump would be pushing all of the hots to all of the hot manifolds, but a wire would go from that little controller, it would go up to the controller, and then you'd have one more thing to tie in. So you'd have three. You'd have thermostats, you'd have pumps, and then you would have individual zone controllers. So that's how that one works. So a little bit different, a little bit more possibly expensive because you're having to buy more units. But I can't remember which one of these is actually more expensive. I think this might have actually been the more expensive one, or not. I can't remember. But I thought this was the easiest setup besides me trying to figure out multiple pumps with, are they going to backflow on each other and cause damage. And then to save on 90s and flow, we got the cold coming back from the garage now. So we didn't put in a bend or a 90 there. We just kind of arced it there, and then we go straight up into the bottom of the pump. We go through our one-way check valve. That again is the T that will go down to the middle pump here for the house. And then this guy here is a stainless steel strainer. So the reason why that's there on the cold line, which I actually said I was going to look this up, but it just made sense to me in my head as I thought about it more. If the pump is letting off rust particles and stuff, or anything's caught in the lines or anything like that, the pumps are easy. That pump right there is only $95. So I can blow these pumps all day long and not really care. This, however, is saving my hot water tank. I do not want a big old piece of rust to come through this line, not have this here, and now I've got cold water being thrown up into my boiler where something can get stuck and cause breakdown and stuff like that. So this is basically just a filter right before we go in there, and that's why I did that. Although come to think of it, now that I'm looking at that, I think I actually have to turn this down so gravity keeps the particles down at the bottom. So we'll have to loosen that clamp up and just twist it. And luckily, once again, PEX A gives you the ability to do that. You can still kind of move pipe within itself or within a fitting, but on the crimp fittings, I was not able to do that. So tomorrow, or again, a few days in the future, we'll go ahead and bring a pipe down over to here, put a 90 right here, so the hot's going out and up, pressure relief valve up top, air separator, and then we'll come back down, snake on over, and then that will complete the hot run. And then we'll just have to figure out where, somewhere in this area or something, we have to put in a T so the hot water can also go out to the garage. So I'm gonna leave it here for tonight, and we'll be back at it again and just keep on going at it, guys. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's been a few more days, several days actually, and I just got the entire room finished up. I know this video is running kind of long, so I just wanted to go ahead and get everything buttoned up. There wasn't much that I was doing off camera except just running more hose. We did go ahead and get all of the intake and exhausts done. They're not 100% because we don't know what we're gonna do up on the first floor yet, but they're about 10 feet up through the first floor, well above my height up through there. I've got some 2x4s nailed to the wall, and then they're strapped to the 2x4s so they're sticking out appropriately. And that's basically just it. I just finished up with the last bit of lines. We do have to get a couple more clamps and everything. I had to borrow some from the radiant tubes down here, and we've got to get like one or two more up in here. I need one more 1 inch, which is one of these guys right here, to put over onto this one. But overall, it's pretty solid right now, but it is done. So if I haven't said it already, I'll say it again. We've got the hot line coming out of here, going up into a pressure relief valve, an air water separator, pressure tank. It comes on down, and then we just go down and 90-90 into the hot. And then on this T right here, that goes on over, feeds on down there, goes on up and goes out to the garage. And then of course we come on back up into pump number 1 with a one-way check valve. We've got pump number 2 with a one-way check valve, and then they both go back to the cold air. And then I did go ahead and flip this filter on down. So this pump shouldn't really break down again because it's stainless steel. But if this one starts chipping off or anything like that, then we can go ahead and catch pretty big sized particles. It's not the finest mesh in there, but easy enough that it should catch anything. So we're not blowing up basically a $2,200 boiler. And then we also got the condensate drains done. So like I said, I tied them into each other. So we're dropping down on hill over here, dropping downhill again, tying into this T, and then both condensates will come out of this guy right here. And I just got to figure out how I'm going to put that into something. Am I just going to shove a 5-gallon bucket under there, or am I going to put it into a condensate pump, like an AC condensate pump, and get that over to the sump pump? I don't know, but again, this is basically what it's going to look like. So we are now ready for the well drillers just to go ahead and turn everything on. I am ready to go ahead and turn everything on once I get gas, and they should be out here this week. Right now it's Sunday. Hopefully they come through. We've had to go through a few different propane companies based on what they're trying to charge us and how much they charge a year, and it's crazy. We've got as much as $1 difference per gallon of propane based on how the company views how they want to like basically dish that out. It's insane how different it is and how they think they can get away with that. The biggest, craziest company was the more items you have, the more they think they're allowed to charge you per gallon. And I'm like, I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense. That's unfair. If me and my neighbor are both using 400 gallons a year, what does it matter if I have 20 items and he has 1? I don't understand how you can charge me 50 cents more per gallon. That's just not fair. So we've gone through several companies, and the one that we've ultimately decided on is basically giving us the tank for free. They're giving us the install for free, but they are the most expensive per gallon, so that's probably why. The only caveat with them, if you're not using 400 gallons or more a year, they charge you $100 a year for the tank. And in my mind, yeah, you end up paying more per gallon, and you end up paying possibly $100 a year, because I don't know how much these guys are actually going to use. But that would take probably 20 to 30 years before we would ever pay off just the tank alone, because they're about $2,000 to $3,000 depending on if they're used or new. So that is a very long time. So again, I don't know. It is what it is. Like I said, it's not cheap, but it's also not crazy expensive. So we're just going to go ahead and go with whoever we think's the best, and that is the one that I decided on. Now, last thing I just want to talk about real quick, as you can see, I got my Fireball installed in here. We could go ahead and install one more in here because, again, this room is over 60 square feet. But the other thing, too, if fire breaks out in here, a lot of these water tanks are going to explode. Pressure is going to be throwing everywhere with water. So that should be kind of almost like a sprinkler system in here if these things melt and that pump is on. Obviously, if the electrical panel melts, though, and the breaker shut off, then that's not going to happen. But I did go ahead and install that. And just the most crazy story in the world, the day I posted that video, I noticed a sound coming from our furnace in the RV. And I'll go ahead and show you a picture up above of what that sound was. That sound was the gas and fumes leaking out of the first bend of exhaust pipe as it leaves out of where the flame goes through. And that hole that you can see is clearly not new. That gas was leaking out into the RV for some time, and luckily that furnace is encased in a metal box. Again, here's a picture right here of what one looks like. And you can go ahead and hit those knockouts out and then install ductwork. So that way they give you like 9 options. So ductwork can go up, side, left, right, and you can attach it and then attach it to your ductwork. And it's like kind of versatility, but that plate was still there where that hole was coming through. But luckily enough, I was able to see through the crack when I looked in there, and I could actually see like orange flame. So I shut it down, hit that knockout out, and found that huge hole. And unfortunately, no one is taking responsibility. Manufacturer of the RV won't do it. Manufacturer of the furnace and the dealership won't take responsibility. They all say you're anywhere from 1 to 2 years on warranty, and then that's it. So this is officially every single thing in the RV has now broken or blown up, has been needed replaced, and it's been basically catastrophic failure like that. The only blame that I can put on that furnace is I can put the blame on me, and I actually can put the blame on the dealership. We took that furnace in one time after it had broken 100 times the first year with the electronic sail switch that gets blown open by the fan, and when it's blown open, it closes a circuit so that the fire will ignite and it will start to go, because obviously you don't want a fire igniting without a blower. And the sail switch had gone out like 100 times, so finally on like the 900th time that I was doing something, it wasn't working at all. And I was like, oh crap, the motherboard broke. So I took it to the dealership and said, the motherboard's broke probably, I get no electricity, and you know, what are we gonna do? They took a look at it over a few days and then called me and said, we've now run this furnace for like 2 hours or 1 hour straight, and it's given us absolutely no problem. So the reason why the fault is on me, I believe the grounding wire was not connected to the metal box properly. So that's why the motherboard wasn't turning on. But now the fault to them, I don't think if you contacted the manufacturer of the furnace, they would recommend go ahead and running that furnace for 2 or 1 hour straight. That first bend there, that flame was constantly hitting that steel, and I guarantee that's just really cheap aluminized mild steel that they use for exhaust pipes. That's just the absolute cheapest stuff that you can buy. And I guarantee the coating was burned off, it overheated, and then over time, we eventually weakened it for the 15 minutes that it does run, and it eventually weakened the metal and it blew it out. But again, dealership's not going to take responsibility for that whatsoever, even though I could say, hey, pull the service records. You guys ran that thing for too long, it got too hot, and we weakened that corner. But again, I know they're not going to do anything about it, so I'm not really going to pursue it. For the past few days, we've been running the space heaters, and that's even given us problems. The space heater blew the inverter on some of the outlets that are connected to the inverter and not to an electric panel. And some of the neutral wires started getting like on fire. They're like brown and black a little bit. And then one of the load wires came out of a quick connect within the inverter. So we had to have our refrigerator and TV on an extension cord going over to an outlet that does run off of a 15 amp breaker. And it took me a few days to figure out that those outlets were on the inverter and not the electric panel. And then when I found out which quick connect, kind of like the same quick connect that's in here on these, you just pull a tab down and stick it in. When I found out which Romex was actually going to that in the inverter, I touched the load wire and found out it was completely loose. So we did not blow the inverter. We did really overheat the wires. So if you are going to run a space heater in an RV, make sure you're connecting it to an actual 15 or 20 amp breaker outlet and not an inverter outlet, because I do not think it can handle the amps or the load. But no clue how plugging it in made the load wire pop out of a quick connect at the same time that the space heater basically fried the thing at the same time. It makes no sense to me, but it is fixed. The inverter's fine. All the outlets are back working. And for right now that we're back to the furnace, we went ahead and cut a hole out in that bend, and we basically repaired it the best way that we could. So it's not leaking gas, it's holding fumes. It's not something that I do have to go ahead and buy a new $1,100 furnace, but we'll keep an eye on it, and if it does break again, we'll throw it away and basically just have to buy a whole new one. So that's all I got for you guys. We are done. We can go ahead and get ready with our garden hoses and our little pumps. Not sure how actually I'm going to do it yet, because we do have so many options. We have a garden hose on pump 1, pump 2. We've got garden hoses up here and up here. And I actually do have a garden hose connector in my pocket that I can actually go ahead and open up the valve on the quick connect, and I actually can pump in there too. So we have multiple options of pumping in and pumping out, so we can get all the air out of the system. Just need to think about how I'm gonna do that. But again, this video is running long. I'm gonna wait for the propane guy to come out, so at least at the same time we can test the gas. We can start pumping the water up in here, and we know that nothing's gonna freeze or break. So we'll wait on another video later this week. We'll get all that documented, and then for the first time, we should have heat in the house, and we can go ahead and actually get, for the first time, water in the house. So I will see you guys next time, again, later in the week. Like and subscribe on this video, please, please, please. And hit us up on Neck of the Woods 2020. We had already posted the difficulties of the RV, so you guys have missed out if you haven't been subscribed on Neck of the Woods 2020 on Instagram. So hit us up over there too. Again, like, comment, and we will see you guys next time later in the week when we finally get this going.